The Ghosts of Painted Mesa. The wind came crawling down from the mesa, carrying the sound of thunder that never reached the ground. Jed Holt rode with it, hunched in the saddle, his coat flapping behind him like the torn wings of something that had forgotten how to fly. The land around him was all bone, dead grass, cracked stone, a silence that pressed on the skull. He'd been a soldier once. Now he was just a man, trying not to remember what that meant. The war had taken his hearing in one ear, half the feeling in his right hand, and all the softness in his heart. The rest, he traded for whiskey and distance. He was 3 days into the desert when he saw the smoke. Thin, gray, wrong kind of smoke for a campfire. Jed slowed his horse, lifted his hand to shade his eyes. The trail led down into a basin where the remains of a wagon smoldered, charred wood, burned canvas, and the faint stench of something human. He rode closer, rifle ready. 2 bodies lay near the wheel, a man and a woman, settlers by the look of them. Both shot clean through, the kind of clean that meant efficiency, not panic. Bandits, maybe, or worse. Jed swung down, boots crunching in the ash. He crouched by the wagon, scanning for tracks. There, a trail of blood dragging off toward the rocks. He followed it. It led to a shallow cave, half hidden under a ledge. The blood ended there, and inside a child, a boy, no more than 12, dark-skinned, hair braided, eyes wide as the desert itself. His small hands clutched a revolver that looked heavier than he was. "Stay back," the boy rasped, voice breaking. Jed froze, raising both hands. "Easy. I ain't here to hurt you." The boy's gaze flicked between Jed and the world outside the cave. His chest heaved fast like a rabbit cornered. "You with them?" "Don't reckon I am," Jed said. "Ain't with nobody no more." He took a slow step closer. The boy's hand trembled on the gun. "They kill my family," he said. Each word cracked raw. "Burned our wagon. Took the others." Jed swallowed. "How many?" "3 men. One with a red coat. Red. Like blood. Like the flag that had flown over too many graves." Jed exhaled slow. "You got a name, kid?" The boy hesitated. "Toma." "Well, Toma, you're lucky I came along. Those men probably heading south for the border. If you want to find the ones that did this, we better move now." The boy's eyes narrowed. "You'd help me?" Jed's voice went dry. "Don't figure I got a choice." He reached out his hand. After a long pause, the boy took it. They rode together under a sky, turning to copper. Toma didn't talk much. Jed didn't press. The boy's eyes kept scanning the horizon, his jaw set in that tight, brittle way that only comes from loss. Jed had seen that look in the mirror once, years ago, before the killing had names. By dusk, they found the trail, 3 sets of horse prints, one with a distinctive notch in the shoe. Jed knelt, touched the print. "Red coat, rides heavy," he murmured. "Probably carry in loot. They'll stop for water for night." Toma stared down at him. "You sure?" Jed nodded. "Been tracking men longer than you've been alive." Toma frowned. "You talk like a soldier." Jed's hand went still. "Used to be," he said. "Long time back." Toma's next question cut sharper than a knife. "You ever burn wagons?" Jed didn't answer. He stood, mounted his horse. "We best keep moving." They caught up with the raiders near Painted Mesa, a canyon painted in streaks of red and ochre, the walls like frozen fire. The men had made camp in the shadow of the cliffs, a fire flickering low. Jed counted 3 shapes, one wearing a red sergeant's coat. His stomach twisted. He knew that coat, that insignia. Hell, he'd worn one just like it once, when the army called it pacification, not murder. The boy saw the recognition in his face. "You know them." Jed nodded, jaw tight. "We fought together. Back when fighting was supposed to mean something." Toma's stare hardened. "Then you owe them." Jed sighed. "Maybe I do." They crept down through the rocks as the wind picked up, masking their approach. Jed's old instincts came back like ghosts, the way to breathe, to move, to listen. When the first shot came, it wasn't Toma's. Jed fired once, clean through the nearest man's neck. The second turned, shouting. Toma's bullet hit him in the gut, folding him in 2. The last man, the one in the red coat, drew fast, but Jed was faster. The revolver roared once, and silence came rushing back. Jed stood over the fallen sergeant. The man blinked up at him, blood on his teeth, disbelief in his eyes. "Jed Holt," he coughed. "Didn't think you'd come back to finish the job." Jed's voice was low. "Didn't think you'd keep doing it." The man grinned through the pain. "We were just following orders. Same as you." Jed's hand trembled on the gun. The words hit harder than any bullet. "Not anymore," he whispered and fired. The wind carried the smoke away quick. Toma stood silent, face half-shadowed by the dying fire. "He was your friend?" Jed shook his head. "He was my reminder." Toma looked at him, eyes wet but fierce. "You could have left me." "Could have," Jed said softly. "Guess I got tired of leaving people." The boy was quiet a long time. Then he said, "What happens now?" Jed glanced toward the east, where the mesa broke into open land. "You've got a tribe somewhere, I reckon. Family still waiting." Toma shook his head. "No one." Jed stared into the fire. "Then you ride with me a while." "I got no kin either." The boy studied him. "You don't talk like a killer." Jed's smile was weary. "Don't feel like one anymore." They buried the dead at sunrise. No words, no prayers, just silence and the wind. As they mounted up to leave, Toma asked, "Why'd you really help me?" Jed looked at the horizon, the sun bleeding over the rocks. "Because once I did what they did. Burned homes. Took orders. Watched kids cry and told myself it was duty." He turned, meeting the boy's gaze. "This time, I wanted to ride the other way." Toma nodded, the first flicker of trust softening his eyes. Jed swung into the saddle. "Come on, kid. The world don't wait for lost souls." They rode out, two figures against the burning light. One old, one young, both marked by ghosts but still moving. As the mesa shrank behind them, the wind rose again, whispering through the rocks like a voice half-remembered. Jed couldn't make out the words, but he thought he understood. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't peace. It was the sound of something learning, at last, to let go. The heat rose off the flats in shivering veils. The horizon looked like a cracked mirror, and the sky was a sheet of brass you could burn a prayer on. Jed Holt and Toma rode through it, their shadows bending long and thin behind them. 3 days since Painted Mesa. 3 nights of the boy waking to the echo of gunfire that wasn't there. Jed hadn't slept much either. The ghosts had found their way back into his saddlebag. They were heading for Bitter Creek, a half-forgotten trading post where the maps stopped pretending to care. Jed said there'd be water and maybe a trail north. Toma didn't ask what waited there for him, maybe because he knew the answer was nothing. The wind picked up late in the day, kicking dust across the flats. That's when Jed heard it, the metallic ring of horseshoes behind them, steady, deliberate. Not desert riders, someone who knew how to track. He didn't turn, just said quietly, "Keep your hand near that pistol, kid." By dusk the sound was gone, swallowed by the wind. But Jed's neck stayed tight with the feeling of eyes. They reached Bitter Creek under a sky bruised purple. The town was 3 buildings and a memory. A saloon leaning sideways, a feed shed, and a well where the water tasted like rust. Jed dismounted slow, letting his joints crack back to life. Inside the saloon, a single lantern burned low. The bartender looked like he'd been poured out of the desert, gray skin, sun-cracked lips. 2 drifters played cards near the stove, neither sober enough to care who won. Jed ordered coffee. Toma sat near the wall, quiet, scanning everything the way stray dogs do. That's when the door opened. The newcomer filled it with dust and presence. Tall, wrapped in a black duster, a silver badge glinting faintly under his coat. His face was narrow, eyes pale as bleached bone. "Evening, Holt," he said. "Didn't think I'd find you this far south." Jed didn't flinch. He set the cup down careful, like he was placing a stone on a grave. "Didn't think anybody was looking." Name's Calder Reeves. Used to ride with the marshals before the war, made everything complicated. He smiled without warmth. "You remember the reward on your head, I reckon." Toma's chair scraped as he half rose. Jed's hand went up, still calm. "Kid, sit." Calder stepped inside, boots whispering against the boards. "Word is you shot a lieutenant in Wichita. Burned a depot in Topeka. walked out a firing line that wasn't supposed to miss. He stopped 3 paces away. I'd call that desertion, murder, and a miracle. Jed's eyes stayed steady. Call it what you want. War's over. Not for men like us, Calder said. We just keep collecting debts. The saloon went still. Even the drunkards looked up. Jed eased his coat aside, showing the revolver, but not touching it. You come here for bounty or closure? Both, maybe, Calder said. See, there's a governor up north who still wants your head on a pike. But me, I just want to know why. Jed's voice roughened. Same reason you'll understand someday. A man gets tired of killing for people who sleep fine afterward. Calder's jaw ticked. You think walking away makes you clean? No, Jed said softly, but it keeps the dirt from spreading. The silence after that felt heavier than gunfire. Calder's hand moved first. Jed's gun cleared leather half a heartbeat later. 2 flashes lit the room, white and brutal. 1 bullet split the lamp. The other tore through Calder's coat and buried itself in the wall. Toma dove behind a table, grabbing his small pistol. Jed, stay down. Jed barked. Calder fired again, splinters flying. The bartender bolted out the back, screaming curses. Jed rolled to the bar, firing once, catching Calder high in the shoulder. The bounty hunter staggered but didn't fall. You still shoot like a preacher, Calder hissed, blood running down his arm. Always sparing the soul. Jed stood, breath ragged. Ain't yours I'm sparing. He stepped closer, gun steady. Walk away, Calder. We both know the pay ain't worth the ghosts. Calder's pale eyes flared, then dimmed. He lowered the gun, chest heaving. I ever see you again, Holt, I finish it. Jed nodded once. Reckon you will. Calder backed into the night, vanishing into the dust he'd brought with him. When the silence settled again, Toma crawled out, face streaked with sweat. You could have killed him. Jed holstered the gun slow. Maybe I did enough of that already. He'll come back, the boy said. Most ghosts do. Outside, the wind howled through the empty street. The lantern flickered out. Jed sat down hard, the weight of years catching up to him. His shoulder trembled faintly. His hand wasn't as steady as it once was. Toma watched him a long moment. Then, quieter. You were a lawman once? Jed's laugh was a rasp. Depends who you ask. To some, I was a hero. To others, a butcher in uniform. And to you? He looked up at the boy, eyes tired but alive. Just a man who ran out of excuses. They left Bitter Creek before dawn, following the pale scar of the river north. Calder's trail would cross theirs again. That much was sure. But for now, the world was wide and briefly kind, a horizon that promised nothing but distance. Toma rode beside him, still clutching that small pistol, the barrel cleaned and oiled. He looked older already, though the sun hadn't changed. Jed glanced over. You can still turn back, you know. Find some place where men don't know my name. The boy shook his head. You taught me something, old man. Oh yeah? What's that? Toma squinted at the rising sun. That sometimes the bad men are just the ones who stop believing there's another way. Jed smiled, barely but real. Don't go making me sound noble, kid. I'm just surviving. Toma looked ahead, thoughtful. Maybe that's what noble looks like now. The horses carried them toward the light, the desert around them stretching endless and unknowable. Behind them, the wind erased every track, except the ones no one could see. The desert slept uneasy that morning. A gray sun rose over the ragged spine of the mountains, washing the land in the color of old bone. Wind swept down the gullies, carrying the ghosts of yesterday's gunfire. By the time it reached Coyote Bend, it whispered one name again and again, Jed Holt. He and Toma had camped beneath a sandstone arch that broke the skyline like a scar. Their fire was only embers, their canteens near empty. Jed sat cross-legged, cleaning the same revolver he'd carried since the war. A Colt that had outlived its purpose, its owner, and any mercy left in the world. Toma was awake too, staring toward the east where the sun bled pale through the haze. He looked smaller in the half-light, a boy again. But his eyes, dark, focused, had seen too much. You keep polishing that gun, Toma said softly. It'll vanish clean through. Jed glanced up, cracked a tired smile. Maybe that's the point. You think Calder's still out there? Jed didn't answer right away. He tightened a screw, reassembled the chamber. Men like him don't stop till the trail runs cold. Problem is, I keep leaving footprints. Thomas shifted, pulling his jacket tight. Then maybe we ride faster. Jed looked at him, really looked, and saw something hardening behind the boy's fear. You got someone to run to, kid? No, Thomas said, but I got someone to ride with. Jed sighed, holstered the gun, and stood. That's the kind of talk that gets you killed. Maybe, Thomas said, but it's better than dying alone. They broke camp and rode north toward the bluffs. The desert had that Sunday quiet, not peaceful, just waiting. By mid-morning, vultures traced slow circles overhead. That's when they saw the dust plume. Jed reined in. Riders. Thomas squinted. How many? 6, maybe 7. That'll be Calder. Thomas' hand went to his revolver, his knuckles pale. We could make a stand. Jed shook his head. You make a stand when there's something worth standing for. We ain't there yet. He turned his horse west, spurring hard. Come on. The desert swallowed them quick, a blur of sagebrush and sandstone spires, sun slicing through like God's own knife. Behind them, the dust plume grew larger. By noon they reached the canyon, a maze of red rock and shadow, a place locals once called the Spine of God. The cliffs rose sharp and sheer, the trail narrowing until only one horse could pass at a time. Jed stopped at the crest, scanning the horizon. We can lose him in there, he said, but it's a long way out. Thomas' breath came ragged. You ever think maybe we should stop running? Jed looked at him, sweat-streaked, defiant, half a man and half a ghost already. Kid, he said, running's what keeps us breathing. Then they rode down into the canyon. The sound came first, the distant crack of a rifle echoing off the walls. Stone splintered near Thomas' leg. Down, Jed barked. They ducked behind an outcropping as another shot rang out, closer. The posse had them pinned high on the ridge. Jed drew his Colt, eyes scanning. They're flanking left. Calder's driving us deeper. What do we do? Jed didn't answer. He was counting breaths, mapping the echoes in his head, the old instincts coming back like a bat him. Then he saw it, a narrow chute leading down toward the dry riverbed. There, he said. We cut through and double back. Toma nodded, but his jaw was set in that stubborn way Jed recognized, the kind of resolve that gets men remembered only in stories. They crawled low, staying in the canyon's shadow, until they reached the bottom. Sand crunched under boots. The air was heavy, still, the silence before something breaks. Then came a voice from above. Jed Holt. Calder's call carried down like judgment. You're boxed in. Hand the boy over, and I'll let you die clean. Jed looked up toward the ridge, sunlight cutting Calder's silhouette in gold and gunmetal. He shouted back, You ever die clean, Reeves? A pause. Then Calder's voice cold, Not yet. Gunfire erupted. Jed and Toma dove behind boulders as bullets carved the dust around them. Jed returned fire, 2 shots, quick and sure. One of the riders up top screamed and fell, his body tumbling end over end down the slope. Toma fired too, wild at first, then steadying. Each report echoed like thunder in a church. Jed, the boy called. We're outgunned. I've been outgunned my whole damn life. Jed reloaded, teeth clenched. Cover me. He sprinted from the rocks, firing as he ran, sliding behind another ledge halfway up the slope. Calder's men shifted, their shots scattering. Jed caught sight of the bounty hunter's hat above a ridge, the silver badge flashing once in the sun. He aimed, but before he could fire, another sound cut the air, a single sharp crack from Toma's revolver. Calder staggered, clutching his arm. His gun fell, skittering down the rocks. Jed froze, stunned. Toma stood below, pistol still raised, smoke curling from the barrel. Kid, Jed whispered. You hit him. Toma's voice was flat. He was gonna kill you. Jed climbed back down slowly, the fight draining out of him like breath after prayer. Calder lay slumped against the rock wall, blood darkening his sleeve. The rest of his men had scattered, their courage burned up in the heat. When Jed reached him, Calder looked up, face pale, eyes clear even through the pain. You always find a way to ruin good business, he rasped. Jed crouched. Never cared much for the kind that paid in blood. Calder's gaze flicked to Toma, standing a few feet away, gun trembling in his grip. You gonna teach the boy to be like you? Jed said nothing. The question hung there, too heavy to answer. Calder coughed, blood flecking his lips. Kill me or don't. Either way, the past don't change. Jed looked at Toma. Put it down. The boy hesitated. He'd have killed us both. Maybe, Jed said. But that ain't who we're gonna be. For a long moment, only the wind spoke, brushing dust across the canyon floor, whispering the kind of mercy men forget to offer themselves. Finally, Toma lowered the gun. Calder watched them a moment longer, then laughed a raw, broken sound. You're a fool, Holt. Maybe, Jed said, but at least I'll die one. He turned and walked away, the boy following. Behind them, Calder's laughter faded into silence. They rode until the sun fell and the stars bled through. The desert was endless again, clean in its cruelty. Toma finally asked, You think he'll live? Jed looked back once, the canyon a black wound behind them. If he does, maybe he'll remember what we didn't do. Toma nodded. And if he doesn't, then it's just another grave in the sand. They rode on, the sky turning to silver above them. The trail to Red Hollow was older than the bones buried under it. By the time Jed and Toma reached its edge, the sun was sinking low, swollen and angry, like an open wound bleeding into the horizon. They'd been riding 2 days since Calder's ambush. The land had grown meaner in that time. Less color, less life. The sagebrush turned to gray husks, the stones to cracked tombstones of some forgotten faith. Even the wind carried a sound like whispers, as if the desert itself were warning them to turn back. Toma's horse stumbled, snorting. You sure there's a town out here? Jed didn't answer right away. His eyes traced the distant line of shacks and rusting mine scaffolds barely visible through the heat shimmer. Town might be a stretch, he said finally, but there's folks, and where there's folks, there's food and water. In trouble, Toma muttered. Jed gave a weary grin. Always is. Red Hollow wasn't on any map, and maybe that was the point. Half the buildings had caved in. The mine shaft at the hill's edge yawned wide, its timbers rotted, its mouth dark as a confession. A handful of people still lived there, miners, drunks, widows, the kind of souls the world forgot to bury proper. The saloon's sign hung by one chain, reading only red HO in faded paint. Inside, lamplight flickered weakly over dust-thick bottles. The barkeep looked up when they entered, eyes narrow but curious. Don't get many riders from the north, he said, especially ones that look like they've been chased by judgment. Jed tipped his hat. Just need supplies. Water, food, maybe a place to rest the horses. The barkeep nodded slowly, never breaking eye contact. Sure, but you best keep your business quiet. Sheriff, don't take kindly to strangers. Jed's eyebrow rose. You got a sheriff out here? Not by law, the barkeep said, but he calls himself one. Jed exchanged a glance with Toma, that kind of glance that said we're staying ready. They ate in silence, the air thick with old smoke and bad memory. A piano stood in the corner, one leg shorter than the rest, its keys yellowed like old teeth. No one played it anymore. When they finished, Jed asked, Where's this sheriff? The barkeep nodded toward the far end of the room. He'll find you. He did, not long after dusk. Jed was sitting outside, cleaning his revolver under the brittle stars. Toma slept near the fire, curled under his blanket. The night was still, too still, the kind that presses close against your thoughts. Then came the crunch of boots on gravel. A shadow peeled itself from the dark, broad-shouldered, walking like he owned every inch of dust his feet touched. His hat brim was low, and a cigar ember glowed faintly beneath it. Been a long time, Holt, the man said. Didn't think you'd ride back into hell voluntary. Jed froze. That voice carried 20 years of dirt and betrayal. He looked up slowly. Eli Grant, he said. The man smiled, a cold, broken smile. So you do remember. Grant had been a captain once, Jed's commanding officer during the war. He'd led the platoon that burned a Navajo village along the Colorado line. The same night, Jed turned his gun on the lieutenant and vanished into the desert. Jed rose to his feet. Didn't know you survived that night. Most of me didn't, Grant said. He pulled his coat aside, the glint of a badge pinned crooked to his chest. Figured if God wasn't going to forgive me, I'd make my own kind of law. Toma stirred at the fire, half awake. Jed raised a hand, stay down. Grant took a step closer. You left a lot of ghosts behind, Holt. Some of them found me. Told me stories. I didn't come here looking for ghosts, Jed said. Funny thing, Grant said, they come looking for you. He flicked the cigar away. You owe me, Jed. For that night. For what you did. Jed's voice was low. I stopped a massacre. You stopped my orders. Grant's tone sharpened like glass. And you killed my brother in the process. Jed's eyes hardened. Your brother torched a church with women inside. Grant smiled again, but there was no humor left in it. And you think that makes you the righteous one? We both did what the war made of us. The night seemed to lean closer, listening. Leave the boy out of it, Jed said. Grant's gaze slid toward the fire. Boy's part of it now. Word is, you've been riding with a kid the scout's been looking for. Half Navajo, half trouble. Jed tensed. He's under my protection. Then I reckon protection's about to cost you. By dawn, they had Toma in chains. Grant's men, 6 of them, same eyes as the desert, came at nightfall. They caught Jed off guard while he was tending the horses. A blow to the jaw dropped him to one knee. A rifle but took his breath away. When he came to, his hands were tied, his mouth dry as chalk. Toma stood nearby, wrists shackled, blood on his lip. Grant loomed over them both. You could have run forever, Holt, he said. But you had to play hero. Jed glared up. What do you want, Grant? Grant crouched, smiling like a snake. I want what's owed. You took my brother from me. Now I take something from you. He nodded at Toma. The boy's going to hang at first light. Toma's eyes widened, panic clawing its way through his composure. Jed strained against the ropes, his wrists bleeding. You touch him, Grant, and I'll... Grant struck him across the face. You'll what? Die angry. He stood, brushing the dust from his hands. We all answer for our sins, Holt. Some sooner than others. Then he walked away, leaving them in the half-light of the dying fire. Hours passed. Toma sat against a post, breathing hard. Jed was still bound, ropes biting into his skin. The camp around them slept. Only the cicadas spoke. Jed, Toma whispered. What's he mean about the war? Jed looked at him, eyes hollow, voice hoarse. Means I did things a man don't ever wash clean. Things I thought I buried in the sand. And me? Toma's voice trembled. I didn't do nothing. That's the thing about sin, kid, Jed said. It don't much care who earns it. Toma's jaw set. I ain't hanging for something I didn't do. Jed nodded faintly. Then don't. He shifted, testing the ropes. The knots were tight, but his fingers worked slow, methodical. Old instincts waking up. After a few minutes, he slipped one wrist free. By the time the eastern sky began to pale, Jed was on his feet again. The rescue was fast, silent, and violent. 2 guards by the fire never even woke. Jed's knife was quick, sure. Another man stumbled from a tent, pistol half drawn. Toma clubbed him with a shovel before he could cry out. They moved like shadows through the sleeping camp until they reached the horses. Then a voice called out, low and cold, Knew you'd try. Grant stood by the corral, rifle raised, morning light framing him like a devil in scripture. You can't change what you are, Holt, he said. You just keep spreading it. Jed leveled his Colt. Maybe, but I can still choose what I die for. They fired at the same time. Grant's shot took Jed high in the shoulder, spun him sideways. Jed's bullet hit dead center, just below the badge. Grant staggered, dropped his rifle, and went down to his knees. He looked up, eyes full of something between hate and understanding. Guess we both finally paid, he gasped. Jed stood there a moment, bleeding into the dirt. Not yet, he said softly. Grant fell forward and didn't move again. Toma ran to Jed, grabbing his arm. You're hit. Just another hole to fill, Jed muttered. He looked down at Grant's body. Bury him deep. He was the kind of man who'd claw his way back. They left Red Hollow before the sun reached its peak. Behind them, the mine stood silent, smoke curling from the earth like a final prayer. That night, they camped high above the valley, the stars wide and cold. Toma sat beside the fire, staring at his hands. He was right, you know. About the past. Jed didn't look up. The past don't die. It just changes its face. Toma turned toward him. So what now? Jed smiled, faint weary. Now we keep riding. Until the trail stops looking like a grave. The desert had a way of keeping its promises, and most of them were cruel. By the time Jed and Toma reached the canyon mouth they called Devil's Gate, the sun had turned white, pitiless, and sharp as a blade. The horses moved slow, their ribs showing, and Jed was barely holding to the saddle. His shoulder wound had gone bad, red and angry, the flesh hot beneath his torn shirt. Flies gathered where the blood seeped through the bandage. Each breath rattled like a man, remembering he shouldn't still be breathing. Toma rode beside him, glancing over. "You need to stop," he said. Jed shook his head. "Ain't far now." But his voice had thinned, cracked, more wind than man. Below them, the canyon split open like the earth had been cut in half. The rocks burned orange and rust red, the color of dry blood. At the far end lay a crooked bridge of old planks and rope, swaying over a drop that seemed bottomless. Beyond it, smoke rose. A campfire. And men. Toma spotted them first. "There," he said. "Riders." Jed followed his gaze. For silhouettes against the haze. And in front of them, broad shoulders, a white duster coat, and the glint of a rifle. Calder. Somehow, the bastard had survived Red Hollow, scarred but still standing, like a sin too stubborn to die. Jed sighed, the sound dry as gravel. Should have known he wouldn't stay buried. Toma's jaw tightened. "Then we finish it." Jed looked at him, studying the boy's face. The lines carved there now, the way innocence had been traded for resolve. "You sound like me," Jed said softly. "That ain't a good thing." They reached the canyon floor near dusk. The sky bled purple over the rocks, the light long and low. Toma helped Jed off his horse, propping him against a boulder. Jed's breathing was shallow now. Every inhale a battle. "You go round the ridge," he said. "Flank him when I draw their eyes." Toma stared at him. "You're not in any shape to draw anything but your last breath." Jed smiled weakly. "That's all I got left to give." Toma shook his head. "No, not this time." But Jed's eyes were steady. The same eyes that had once faced cannon smoke and command fire without blinking. "I took enough lives, boy. Don't want yours being one of them. Go." Toma hesitated, torn between loyalty and reason, between the man who saved him and the man who taught him that saving sometimes means letting go. Finally, he nodded. "Don't die stupid." Jed chuckled, a low rasp. "Ain't no other way for me." When Calder's men spotted him, Jed was standing in the open, a lone figure framed by firelight and the whispering wind. His coat hung loose, his revolver low on his thigh. Calder stepped forward, face half lit by flame. The right side was scarred now, the mark Jed's bullet had left. "Well, look what the desert dragged back," Calder drawled. Jed smiled faintly. "Figured I owed you a proper goodbye. You should have stayed gone." "Would've," Jed said, "but ghosts don't sleep easy." Calder's men fanned out. "Where's the boy?" he asked. Jed shrugged. "Free." Calder laughed. "You think freedom's something you can give?" Jed looked past him, toward the fire, the canyon, the stars that didn't care who lived or died below. "No, but it's something worth dying for." Calder's grin faltered just a little. Then he drew. The sound cracked the silence like thunder trapped in stone. Jed's first shot hit the dirt near Calder's boot, his hand trembling from blood loss. The next went wide. Calder's bullet found Jed's chest, spinning him backward into the dust. But Jed didn't fall right away. He stayed standing, swaying, half dead, gun still in hand. "Come on, Holt," Calder shouted, eyes wild. "Ain't you tired yet?" Jed spat blood, smiled faintly. "Born tired." Then another shot rang out from the ridge above. Toma's. It hit Calder square in the shoulder, knocking him off balance. He turned, firing toward the rocks, shouting curses that echoed through the canyon. Jed used the last of his strength to aim once more, slow, deliberate. His final bullet found Calder's heart. The outlaw sheriff dropped to his knees, eyes wide with shock, then fell forward, dust rising around him like smoke from a dying altar. Toma came running down the slope, breathless. Jed was on the ground now, hand pressed to the wound, eyes dimming. "You shouldn't have," Thomas started. Jed raised a trembling hand. "Hush now." Toma knelt beside him, the firelight painting both their faces gold and red. "You done good," Jed said softly. "Better in me." Toma shook his head. "Don't talk like that. We'll get you to a doctor." Jed smiled faintly. "No doctor's where I'm going. Just a long trail and the sound of boots I'll never catch." He coughed, breath rattling. "Listen to me, boy. There's a thing I learned too late. Mercy ain't weakness. It's what keeps a man human." Toma's throat tightened. "And if mercy gets you killed?" Jed looked up at the stars, endless, indifferent. "Then at least you die remembering what it feels like to be alive." He reached out, placed a hand on Toma's shoulder. "Don't become me. Let the dust have what it's owed and ride on." Then his hand fell away. The desert wind picked up, swirling through the canyon, carrying the ashes of gunpowder and the faint echo of church bells that weren't really there. Jed Holt died like the West itself. Not clean, not noble, but stubbornly, beautifully unbroken. Toma buried him at the edge of Devil's Gate, under a cairn of red stones. He carved a single line into the wood marker with his knife. He rode till the ghosts were quiet. Then he took Jed's hat, his revolver, and the horse they shared, and rode east, toward the rising sun. Weeks later, folks in small border towns started whispering about a rider they'd seen on the horizon. Young, quiet, with a scar on his cheek, and a look in his eyes like he'd seen the end of the world and chose to keep riding anyway. He didn't rob. He didn't kill. He just showed up when men were about to make the same mistakes he once watched another man die for. Some said he was a ghost. Others said he was the last good outlaw the desert ever made. But those who looked close enough swore they saw mercy in his draw. Final lesson: the law of the broken sun. Every man rides through life carrying his ghosts. Some try to outdraw them. Others try to forget. But the only ones who find peace are those who face them and still choose to be kind. Mercy is the hardest gun to carry, but it's the only one that never misses its mark.